Hello again. So now that we have a plywood cutting station, it's time to start working on cutting some plywood. Now, not that this is a unboxing video, but I do have to unbox the saw. So as I mentioned in the last video, getting this saw was a little bit more challenging than it should have been. As you can see, the box that the saw came in was a nice little, 14-ish inches square. The rail, which is the black bag that is to the left of me at the moment, is 52 inches long. So the box that it came in was like 5 feet almost by like 2-ish inches by, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches. So very, very different sizes and different needs. But I didn't know how it was packaged. So when we only got the one tracking number, I didn't think anything suspicious. So if you're going to buy something like this, you're probably going to get two boxes. Make sure you get 2 tracking numbers. So the struggle was that basically Amazon didn't believe that there was a problem, or probably more accurately, they are essentially accusing me of trying to defraud them, which is kind of annoying since they're the ones who choose the shipper. And we've had problems with FedEx pretty much since we moved here. They either don't deliver to us, or they deliver to the neighbors and don't tell anybody, don't say anything. They put it in random places on the neighbor's property, things like that. So there's been several times that we've had packages that went missing, and it's not that our neighbors are unscrupulous or dishonest or anything. They've in fact never been the cause of a problem, but sometimes they aren't home, or I just don't find out about it until the next day or something. But regardless, I file a complaint with Amazon every time I get a misdelivered package, because they need to know they're choosing crummy shippers. It finally got bad enough that we had some DJ gear that was delivered to the neighbors, and they weren't home, and FedEx suddenly showed it was delivered, and I didn't even see them drive by, which is the guy was super quick about it, and Charlie our dog didn't notify me. It didn't bark at all. So I didn't even notice that it was here, and then I went to check, and it said it was delivered a couple of hours ago, and it was signed by me as having been delivered. So I reached out to the company that shipped the stuff and said, hey, we've got a problem. So they started researching it, and FedEx recorded that as being delivered to an address that was 40 miles away, which threw up a bunch of red flags. So they actually took some action on their end and filed a complaint, and the FedEx supervisor got a hold of me. We figured out after a few hours that it was delivered to the neighbors here, and so I let Sweetwater know about that, and they said, okay, we're going to keep this open because obviously there's a problem with the delivery system. So apparently the driver got, I don't know how in depth his disciplinary action went, but the supervisor said they were going to take care of it and talk to them. So ever since that time, we have had every single delivery from FedEx brought to our house, our camper. And I mean, the guy's actually really nice. We talk every time he comes by. So I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so in this instance, though, there was actually no saw delivered with the saw track combo. So I kept fighting with them, or with Amazon, about that, and fighting with them, and it just wouldn't go anywhere. Their system would update and it would say, okay, expect a refund by this date, expect a refund by this date. I escalated that in their chats, since that's really the only way to get a hold of anybody, and finally got somebody who said, okay, well, we're going to submit a return, and there's a key piece of information here that I ordered a saw track combo, an extra track, a track bag, a coupler kit for the track, and clamps for the track, all at the same time. So that's going to come into play and create more confusion, because when I returned the package that was received, which we got 2 tracks, one said box 2 of 2 on it, and the other one did not have that printing on the box packaging. So I returned the one that said box 2 of 2. When that was received back a few days later, I got a refund for the other track, and that took 6 weeks of arguing and fighting, and I actually finally filed a complaint with the credit card company, because there was such an issue with it, and then Amazon escalated it to their basically to their fraud team, who said, hey, fill this form out, tell us what's going on. And I described everything, described the fact that they could check their own records and see that the package they delivered was like 1.5 pounds, and if you looked at Makita's website, the saw weighs like 9 pounds or 12 pounds after packaging or something like that. So it definitely was not shipped. And then they finally took care of it. It was just a big, huge headache. During the course of that, we ended up actually just driving down to Portland and buying it from Woodcraft? No, I don't remember. One of the woodworking stores, because they were the only ones near us that actually had one in stock. We tried Seattle and Tacoma, and they were both out of stock. So we ended up getting the saw, but it came from a local purchase and ended up actually being cheaper than Amazon anyway. So quite the headache. But it's here, and it does exactly what it's supposed to, as you can see. It makes cutting these quite easy, and as long as you are marking accurately on the board, it makes cutting them super accurate. I've been building speakers since 98, 99, I guess, so for like 24, 25 years. And I've usually end up having the lumberyard do the first few cuts to get them down to at least like a 4x4 size, and then I break them down past that on the table saw, and that's always a scary predicament because I don't have any kind of a cabinet saw that's actually built for handling sheet goods. Needless to say, they're never completely accurate. The assembly process, I can usually, fudge things a little bit and trim things a little bit as needed. So they've always looked good, but, they weren't always perfectly square. And you'll see here in a minute, I actually started checking with a 12-inch square to make sure everything was as square and accurate as I could, and so far the assembly of these boxes has gone quite a bit more smoothly than any of the previous speakers I've ever built. So that definitely says a lot to the function. Now for quite a few years now, I've resisted actually getting a track saw because they're not cheap. The saw combo, I believe, was a little over 500, and then an extra extension so I could cut up to 8 feet if I need to, plus the little adapters to make the clamps and the connector and things like that. I want to say it was a little over 700 or something at the time of the purchase. Like everything, it's probably going to go up in the not too distant future. that little orange sheet mover, I think is what they actually called it at the store, was an amazing purchase, by the way. That was like $11. You just lift one end of the plywood, rock it onto, or stick that under it, rock it up, and you just walk. It's still a little awkward, but it's manageable with only the one person. So that's a huge benefit, whatever. Right here, I came to the realization that I'm going to start cutting the pieces for the subs, and because those are bigger boxes, it's a 15-inch woofer. The pieces are much bigger, so I actually only can get basically 2 pieces per sheet. And I figured, you know what? The saw can handle up to like 2¼ inches or something like that. Sheet of plywood's a little under 3/4 of an inch, so why not? Let's try and just save some effort and cut on these, at the same time. And obviously I came to the realization that this is quite a sturdy plywood table. And that actually worked really well to just climb up there when I needed to. So yeah, but I ended up just cutting 2, both sheets at the same time, which made it really easy to make the exact cut that I needed. However, for some reason the blade got stuck on that as I started that cut, which was really weird. I never had it happen on any other cuts, and I was trying to figure out why it happened there. And I guess there's a little bit this. I've figured out since then what the problem actually was, is that the second rail from the right has actually warped just a little bit, and so it sticks up. I'm going to have to just plane that down, or set it on the mill if I happen to be milling something or whatever. But once I figured that out, I was able to just kind of work around that, but it really got jammed in there. Pretty hard. So as far as the saw itself, because I had tried, put that off for so long, I've tried several times making little jigs that, were basically homemade track saws. And the best I can say, in my opinion, is that they worked very crudely. I never felt like they were actually a reliable method, because I was constantly fighting the saw, and if you happen to forget that you have to push the saw up against that rail pretty hard, or it tries to wander. And I've seen some people where they've tried to make them and they actually put little grooves and things in them. I never got that in depth with one, so maybe that would have solved the problem. But I don't know that it really would have. I think it does work much better to have an actual track saw. That said, I don't know that I would actually buy another from this brand. It's easy to use. There was a little bit of learning curve, mostly because of the plywood table. As I mentioned before, the rails, I think, need to be shifted in just a little bit, or hopefully the clamps will, I can just clamp to the rails, and that would solve that problem. But the build quality of the saw, I feel, is kind of lacking for the price. Like, I have a Milwaukee circular saw that has been an amazing saw. I've had it for a few years now, and I've never once had a problem. I've never had it bind on me. I've never had it bog down. I've never had it have any kind of issues. The the what's it called? The foot of the saw, the plate, is solid metal. I'm pretty sure it's like a cast iron kind of a thing. It's very well built, very sturdy. I feel like I could take it wherever I need to, and if it gets beat up, so be it. It'll just keep going. The vast majority, like all of the mechanisms that control it, are also all metal. On this saw, everything that should, in my opinion, be metal is plastic, and I'm not too keen on that. I wish that would have been something explained in some of the literature for the saw. I compared quite a few different brands. The only one I didn't actually consider, to be honest, was Festool, because price. Festool is a very expensive brand, but maybe that would have been what I needed to buy. I don't know. So we'll see how long it lasts. We'll see how well it withstands. I plan on using it for milling. I plan on using it for cabinetry. I plan on using it for, obviously, speaker boxes and who knows what else. And it'll definitely get its share of use in the rotation of tools. The circular saw will get a little bit less use, probably because of it, but it's not that often that I tend to rip down slabs and things. Although there is the chance that because this motor does seem to be a little bit weaker than the Milwaukee, that maybe for slabs I would rather have a slightly wavy cut than deal with the potential bog when it binds. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see what the future brings. I'm pleased with it so far, other than it just feels a little flimsier than it should. So we'll definitely see. You can see I've started to make some pretty good progress as I take a break and sit down to text. Good timing on the voiceover. It's definitely made quite a bit of progress. Or excuse me, quite a bit of improvement for what I need to do. And as you can see here, I've kind of figured out a workaround for the issue with the table. And see, the weird thing is that it didn't bind here at all, and that was essentially the same cut that I had made previously. So I don't know, I really just a couple of different things combined together, I guess. Similar to the double sheet, I figured make a rough cut here so I have a nice straight line, and then I can use that as my reference and cut the last couple of pieces, because each box does have 6 pieces, 4, so there's 4 faces and backs, 4 sides, 4 tops and bottoms, and then all of the scrap pieces. There's actually going to be very little waste. All the scrap pieces are going to be braces, but I haven't started working on those yet because I need to, in my mind, I want to have the boxes mostly finished so I can kind of figure out where I want a brace. Now, there's a lot of audiophiles in the world, and in some degree I consider myself one of them, because I like sound, I like music, I like hearing things well, and I love good quality sound. So that's why I've always built my own speakers. I could admittedly build better speakers, and someday I would love to have a theater room / music room, which would ultimately also also function as a gaming room, because why not? That's the best room to be in if it's built for sound. Ideally, the theater seats would not actually be a permanent fixture. They would be something I could move off to the sides, so that when we're doing music type stuff, we could still use them as seats, but then they'd have a spot where you move them into the middle of the room to the prime listening positions when you want to watch a movie. But who knows, that's quite a ways away from being something that I have to actually worry about. But if I had that scenario, then I think it would definitely be worth it to invest more into the minutia of audiophile world and technicalities, I guess. So, for instance, I could build a little accelerometer to measure how far the walls of the speaker are moving, to make sure that the sound is only coming from the woofer and tweeter. I would love to take the time and have the ability to build a set of boxes and actually compare the resonant frequencies of different woods. I'd love to build an ash box and a oak box and a maple box and a pine even, or Doug fir. Build a bunch of different boxes so I can compare and see how they all sound, and figure out what produces really the best quality sound for the music that I listen to. But for this kind of stuff, realistically, at the end of the day, this is a PA system. And no matter how good I make the speaker, it's never going to sound perfect, because it's never going to be in the same room in the same way twice. I might be in somebody's backyard for a backyard wedding, and I might be in a church gym, and I might be in, say one that has a half-size basketball court. I might be in one that has a full-size basketball court. I might be in a school gym that's 4 basketball courts. I might be on a football field. I might be in a church meeting hall. Might be in somebody's garage or barn. So no matter how good I could make the speakers, I have to weigh the benefit versus the cost in time and research. What I do know is that the speakers that I'm building are an improvement on the old speakers that I used to have, and those were the 4th or 5th version of speakers that I had built. We started with just a straight up box and threw some carpet on it and a speaker in it, a woofer and a horn. And actually, I take that back. I think the first speaker box only had a sub, and so I think it was a 15-inch woofer, and that was it. And then we built some other speakers, and learned a little bit more, and built some more, and learned a little bit more, and built some more. And the last set that I had, the last 2 sets, there was one that we sold to a friend when we moved from Utah to Washington, and then there's one that we sold to a dance studio. The dance studio set was the main speakers that I used for all of my DJ events, and it consisted of a pair of 18-inch subs, a pair of 10-inch woofers, and a pair of 12-inch woofers. Both of those were 2-way, so they had horns in them, and passive crossovers built into them. The system was amazing, and we would use that for church and school and gym and parades, and every year that the dance studio would hire me, they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were able to provide the sound that they needed, which said a lot because they would broadcast in front of the truck that they were driving and behind it, and they would have some of the, they'd have different age groups for the girls dancing, and the youngest girls were up in the front, and the older ones were kind of at the back. And so all of them needed to be able to hear everything. And I bet they at times had about 1,000 feet in between them. And when I would control the sound, but the dance ladies would control the music itself with their phone or MP3 player connected to the sound system. And every now and again I'd say, hey, I've got everything set pretty well, I think. I'm going to just go check and see how things sound. And I would always do this twice during each parade, where I would get out of the truck and then walk up to where the next group or next parade entry person, people, whatever, are at, and then I would just stand there in the crowd and just keep an eye on how things sounded, if there was any clipping, if the horns were too loud, if the subs were not loud enough, whatever the case may be. And I would wait until after they had completely passed and the next group was then in front of me in the parade route. And then I would just walk back up and jump back in the truck and make any changes that I felt like I needed. But at that point, I rarely ever needed to do any tweaking. We got most of all of that worked out when we first set it up in the truck. But the first year we did that, they had dozens of people compliment them on the sound that they had, because they had previously used a different sound company, and I guess it was a noticeable change. So that was always a pleasing thing for me. And they hired me the next year, and they hired me basically the year before they started hiring me for the following year. And we did that for, I think, 5 years. 5 years, I think we did that. So when we moved, it made sense to offer to them, to see if they wanted that sound system. And they jumped at the chance to do that. So that was a pretty sweet deal. They actually were going to let me rent that from them for my daughter's wedding. But in discussing things with Emily, we just decided that this was a hobby that I have severely missed, and she could tell that not doing this as a hobby was something that took its toll on me. I guess it was a source of light and joy that was missing in our lives. So she convinced me that we needed to just bite the bullet and build a new system for this wedding, and then from then on I have another sound system and can start doing this as a hobby business again. So yeah, at this point though, the speaker parts are all cut, and I've got one last sheet that I need to break down. I've got to build a couple of equipment boxes, and that black box that you saw was one of the old equipment boxes from an amplifier that I was going to model off of. And I'm glad I kept that, because it made it really easy to just take the measurements and figure things out. So I'm going to hurry and break this down, but for the most part, we're pretty close to being done with all of the main cutting. The next part is the precision cutting and whatnot, and that's putting recessed spots for the handles, and putting the baffle holes and mount holes for the speaker stand top hats and things like that. So that all comes next. And they go together pretty well, pretty easily and pretty quickly for the most part. The only real complication that I've had with this set is that I'm building a three-way speaker, which is not something I've ever done before. So that was a lot of the pieces that I actually had to cut on the table saw. Was for so there's a little like 5 by 3 by 8 sized speaker box that I had to cut pieces for, and that actually goes inside of the larger 12-inch woofers box. So I had to bump up the size of the box just a little bit to account for that, and I mean, it went together fairly well. At this point, I've got the little boxes fully assembled and glued to the back of the larger faces. And there's one of the little boxes, as I was just trying to show Emily for a comparison. But I ended up getting the amp box, a box for the mirror ball, and a box that will double as little equipment stands on the sides of the computer, so that the MIDI controller and the light controllers are all accessible and kind of tilted up. So we're pretty much at the end of the footage for today. Emily was convincing me to call it for the night and come in. I have a hard time quitting when things aren't fully done, so I wanted to just get a couple more cuts, but then that started to turn into a couple more, and so I ended up just calling it for the night. But that'll be where we end for the footage today, and thank you again, as always, for watching, and stay safe out there. God bless you and yours.